Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This is probably going to be a short one because rather than looking at new swords and a bunch of new features and things, we're going to be, it's more of an update on a couple of swords we already saw. So making sword videos, it's possible that sometimes you don't know everything about a specific sword. It's the case of this one. So this one, when I talked about it, actually, I asked you guys if you knew anything more about it, if you could help me identify it a little better, and you did, so I have that information now. And on the other hand, it's also possible, as is the case for this one, that some small inaccuracies kind of creep into the video, so I just figured since they were pointed out to me, and I think it makes sense to, correct them. So, okay, so we'll kick it off with this one. If you remember the previous video where I kind of went through its details, this is a bit of a weird sword. I called it a weirdo, in fact. And it's because it has some modern features, well, relatively modern at least. You can see the blade is nickel plated. It obviously has a rather modern style to it, so it's not something from, let's say, the early 19th century or the mid 19th century either. But the hilt is unusual because, well, it's some kind of alloy that could be like some nickel alloy, I suppose, or German silver or something similar. The style of it, so it's again something that is a little more modern. The style of it is way more reminiscent of French Revolution kind of sword, so around the end of the 18th century. So this was a little bit weird because, yeah, it's just a very unusual setup for a blade, for sword. So I didn't know what it was exactly. I asked you guys for suggestions, and actually someone came back with the image that we're seeing right now. And as you can see, this is a page from a catalog of a fourbissier or furbisher. That's a private supplier of weapons and custom weapons or uniforms and these kinds of things. So what's interesting here is, together with the retro vibe of these swords, you can see interesting names too. So this one here is actually called the Louis XVI model. So it actually fits exactly with that kind of revolutionary phase we were discussing. And it's interesting, you can see the price too. So it's at 45 francs at the time. Now, there's no date on this excerpt of catalog page. So my assumption would be this isn't old enough. The catalog has a phone number, as you can see. So it's not, let's say, from the end of the Franco-Prussian War. It's not the 1870s kind of thing, I would assume. So I would probably imagine this dates to sometime, and it's just my opinion, of course, sometime maybe before or during World War I. So it's like, or yeah, I think the sharpening must have been there for a reason, and so I wouldn't expect it to be much later than World War I, but probably also not much earlier than the turn of the century, I think. This is speculation, but it's really cool, I think, that we can give it a name, an official name of the model, and it's really cool to see this piece of catalog where we can kind of see how officers, French officers, ordered or chose their personalized apparel. So this is this one. Next, we take a look at this one. So if you remember the video, and if you haven't, perhaps it's something you might enjoy watching, so check out the rest of the channel. But this one in the video I had described as a French, I think I said light cavalry officers 1896 saber. Now, there are a few inaccuracies in what I said in the video, so I want to correct them here. And I really want to thank whoever pointed them out. I'm not naming them because I don't know if they want their name publicly shared. Like, some people enjoy their privacy. So thank you, you know who you are. And let's move on. It is a fantasie 1896 hilt, but the first inaccuracy is that the 1896 was actually a heavy cavalry sword, so not a light cavalry sword or a general cavalry sword. So that is something that's important to point out. The other is that when I talk about the blade being fragile and a blade that was heavily criticized and everything, it's not exactly this blade, because this isn't a original 1896 blade. This is a variant of an 1883 blade. So these changes, of course, were fairly common in French swords. We know that there wasn't always there was a lot of leeway, let's say, in how officers configured their swords, so it's not something unusual. But it's even more common in the case, apparently, of 1896 swords. So the original blade, unlike this one, where you see the fuller reaches, let's say, maybe 4/5 of the blade, I would say, the original blade had a fuller that reached almost all the way to the tip. And actually, until 1907, it even had a second fuller somewhere along the tip here. So I'm not very familiar with where it was because I haven't handled one. But let's say there was this long fuller plus potentially a second fuller at the back of the tip. And these were, given their fragility and their bad reputation, were mostly substituted on all of the hilts around 1915. Obviously, I assume that with the gearing up for war, people weren't really too happy to go to battle with a blade that was known to be fragile, so it was substituted with other blades. And these were most commonly the 1854, model 1854, or the model 1882. So as I was mentioning, this apparently is a variant of a model 1883, and that mark I saw here, if you remember in the video, I couldn't place, it's VPB, actually connects to the makers of the mark on the hilt. So here there's a petit fil and bailhache, and the VPB, P, petit fil and bailhache, and the V is probably the, I don't know, the given name of petit fils, I suppose. And while we're here, one last integration of information, I suppose, is that the 1896 wasn't substituted completely, in a sense, by the 1923, as I mentioned in the video. And that is because the 1983 was only meant for officers, not for troops. So it's not a complete substitution there, but mainly, or also, because obviously after 1923 we already have the transition of heavy cavalry, like the function of heavy cavalry on the battlefield is already moving towards what tanks are. So there's really no more use for actual heavy cavalry battle-ready swords. So that was it. By the way, this sword is most likely shipping to the US, to a new home. So, well, I hope it's going to be enjoyed and loved. And thank you for watching. I occasionally might have other of these updates as I figure new things out about swords I discuss, but there's going to be a whole bunch of new stuff coming too. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching and see you soon.